I just want to say welcome to our first webinar of 2021. We did quite a few of these. We did 28 in 2020. We've got them logged on our website, archived on our website, whytry.org. We talked about a lot of really, I think, timely subjects, and we had some incredible panelists on to continue or to help with these discussions. And I'm so excited to be able to get going with these again in 2021. And this one I'm really thrilled about because for this particular one, we have three people that I've been really fortunate enough to get to know professionally, but also at a friendship level. I've been able to work with all of you in different capacities going into your areas and work with you. And it's just been awesome. And so we're thrilled to have everybody on. We're going to be talking today about creating a resilient school culture and specifically trying to do that during a pandemic. And what I will do now is introduce our panelists. We are thrilled to have with us Dr. Camille Scott Tolliver. She's been widely praised and recognized for her unwavering commitment to community service within Indianapolis and surrounding communities. Her career path began working as a case manager for Department of Child Services, after which she made a career shift into the field of education. She's taught 7th through 12th grade business ed, as well as 5th through 9th grade math and English. Hunger to have greater access to academically struggling students, Dr. Tolliver earned her administrative and superintendent's license, became the principal of an alternative school filled with students who had experienced severe trauma and needed another opportunity to make better life decisions. There, she was able to coach and develop a team of educators and academic leaders and develop positive relationships. In just 2 years, she doubled the school's graduation rate, and in 3 years, 99% of her seniors were graduating from high school. She's all about relationships, and she's an incredible educator. Welcome, Camille. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Tanya Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins currently serves as the executive director at Quest Charter Academy and is an accomplished professional who has either led or supervised all levels of K through 12 education in Central Illinois. She's got her doctorate in school culture and is a highly effective transformational leader who specializes in school turnaround. Dr. Jenkins has a talent for being a visionary and rendering results by use of 21st century creative best practices, which include collaborative, humanistic, artistic, and child-centered methods. She's an experienced leader who focuses on meeting established goals through monitoring student rigor, attention to cultural differences, and acknowledging staff successes. Welcome, Tanya. We are thrilled to have you.
My pleasure. Good afternoon, everyone.
Let's see. And then next, oh, I should mention as well, I do not want to skip this part. Also been published several articles in educational journals. We're always thrilled to have somebody published on here, supervised principals, and you're an expert in kind of combining the arts and education, really talented in that area. So last but not least, we have Mike Yantis. Mike is a district social worker at Bismarck Public Schools in Bismarck, North Dakota. Mike's been a social worker for 28 years. He's been employed with the Bismarck Public Schools for the past 15. For the first 13, Mike served at the school level, providing social work support to students, families, and school teams. Currently, Mike works at a district level, assisting secondary schools with developing and strengthening systems of support to promote mental health for all. Mike is a graduate of the University of Marion Bismarck and is an educational fellow with the Child Trauma Academy. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And then I am Jason Johnson. I'll be serving as a kind of moderator, trying to keep the discussion going. My background is I'm a school psychologist. I was published on the topic of adolescent resilience. My path in the world of WhyTry crossed about 5 years ago. And I switched over from public ed over to working with the WhyTry organization. And it's just been an awesome 5 years where I've been able to work with some of the most incredible humans alive throughout the country as we kind of share our passion for resilience and for trying to help out and advocate for kids. So thrilled to be here and thrilled for this discussion. As I mentioned, we are going to be talking about building resilient school culture. And to start with, I thought it might be helpful to just, if maybe the three of you could share your a little bit about your experience just over the past couple years. Wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you've been doing and how building a resilient school culture has been part of that. And maybe if we could go in this order, let's go Tanya, Mike, and then Camille.
Sure thing, my pleasure. So let me start us off with, for the last couple of years, we know, at least the last year and a half, we've been working through this whole COVID-19. So things are topsy-turvy at best, right? We do the best we can. So for the resilience piece, for me, I think for our first conversation this afternoon is to just share a little bit about the fact that we go back to culture. For me, it's what do we believe in? What do we value? What are our beliefs as an organization? And we look to those beliefs. We look to those values. We look specifically to our mission statement and to our vision statement to guide us. And we spend the time as staff talking about that. And then we go into what does practice tell us that we need to do because of those values and beliefs and because of what we say is our mission. And we redefine what that's going to look like. It's not business as usual. It's where are we today? What does this new occurrence in the world mean for education and for our students and our families? And we take it to a personal level back to the heartstrings of why are we in education? What are we doing? And does it make sense in the world that we're living in right now? So for me, it's all about your vision and your mission and about culture, because that culture has to speak to, are we really walking the talk or are we just putting words on a page? And I'll stop there.
Love it. Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
All right. Jason had mentioned that my position had changed a little bit recently over the last couple of years, and I think the pandemic and distance learning has impacted everything that we do. But my mission has been to help Bismarck schools develop a culture that supports mental health for all, and really doing that through our MTSS system and adding, integrating those mental health supports along, really bringing PBIS and mental health supports together. And that concept of us working within not siloed systems, but teaming and working together along that continuum of support. So it's really about taking those things we do for all kids and adding that trauma-based lens to that focus, and building in systems for specific relationship building, school connectedness, enhancing safety, psychological safety and personal safety. And I can talk more as we get into this about what that looks like. But really what I've been doing is working with the schools and saying, let's look at what is our culture and how can we impact that through the systems and the work that we do with kids, and really teaching our adults along that system what they need to know to be able to support kids within that. And through that process, we've been able to prepare our schools to incorporate direct mental health therapy for students as kind of that tier 3 intervention, but to have those therapists integrate along tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 with what we do. And when I think about building resilience, a resilient culture within your school, it's really about having the knowledge and pieces in place to be able to continue to grow that on a daily basis, to evaluate where you're at with that, use those PBIS database decision-making structures that we incorporate into that to know where our gaps are and where we need to move forward, and be able to base that on the needs of our students. So really that's been kind of my role over the last couple of years in working with our school.
Nice. Thank you. Camille.
Yeah, so I was a former alternative education principal, and I left that position in 2019 to start my own education consulting business, where I support alternative education schools, juvenile detention centers, any organization or even individuals who work with students who have either been incarcerated, who've been kicked out of school publicly, who are kind of like on their last chance. And so I provide services to schools, anyone that's needed to help support them to build resilience, and also to help them build better relationships with those students.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, let's dig into what it means to have a resilient school culture now. Tell me, what do you think are the key ingredients to building a resilient school culture? And let's mix up the order just a little bit. Let's go, Mike, Camille, Tanya.
Okay, perfect. I actually, when I think about the key ingredients, I go back to always that systems approach to how we develop the skills within students. And I'm gonna actually, if I could share my screen, I just want to kind of do that continuum and that tier 1, tier 2, and then tier 3, those high level supports for a few. What we did was really took that pyramid and turned it on its side and really focused on it as a district, as a continuum of supports for students, and saying, we're going to wrap that first tier in some good trauma focused practices that really look at that intentional relationship building activities. When look at ACEs and the research that we have out there that shares that shows us that parent, caring adult in their lives are really one of the biggest protective factors for students. But relationships also are that source, that resource for students, and be able to build those resilient skills. But making sure that each of our schools have specific activities that they are doing and monitoring in regard to relationship building. Also, resulting in doing the specific activities in regard to safety, psychological safety, personal safety, and staff wellness. I think about the needs that if we're going to help our students as we do this, making sure that we've got some planned supports for staff, being that one of the issues was setting boundaries, I think, when we got into this, and staff just working a lot of evenings and trying to respond through that distance learning process, and having some ways to help them set some of those boundaries and still be able to connect with their kids and do their job. But that blue zone really combines with tier 1. And at tier 1, those rules and expectations, all these evidence-based practices schools have in place, but they have some freedom as to what they look like. Rules and expectations may be defined differently at one school in regard to, we're going to use an acronym to define those expectations, but the basis is there for each of them. And the key one for me under tier 1 is that core SEL curriculum. And we assure that all of our students receive direct instructions in regard to social emotional learning, and then incorporate that into the classrooms when we can. So that, to me, when I think of a typical PBIS school or schools working under that MTSS framework, the adding that SEL component to that piece and then wrapping it in with those relationship building and safety pieces are key to, as a system, building a resilient school culture, right? It's those activities that build your school culture. Is what you track and what you notice is really what you're going to, it's going to impact your results of what you do. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Camille.
Absolutely. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen, and hopefully.
Yeah, better luck than I do. Hopefully.
Yeah, let's see here. Let's try this. All right, it worked. Perfect. So I think the key ingredients for a resilient culture, there are 3 things that I think of. And the first one is unconditional value. When every student has worth and value because they have relationships with the caring adults who believe in their potential to succeed. The second ingredient, I think, is transparency. When teachers and principals and other adults are able to share their own personal stories and their own challenges and setbacks And then finally, another ingredient is accountability. When students learn to take responsibility for their actions and begin overcoming their own personal struggles or academic and behavior challenges with the assistance of a caring adult. So when the entire staff comes on board and ensure that every student is valued, every student has a caring adult, when they're willing to be transparent and share in their own personal struggles, because we all are resilient in some area of our lives. And then when together, students and even staff are holding each other accountable and using those relationship skills to help them overcome any challenges, because you want to have that bounce back environment. So when a student walks in the building, they feel it. They understand that my teacher values me, I'm understood, and I can make mistakes and I can grow from them because we're doing it together.
That's awesome. And that, I think that that part you said at the end is really key to that resilient piece, when there's kind of freedom to dare to be able to make a mistake. That's really empowering. And I'm excited. I think you'll probably share a story that I love of an example you did when we talk about this more in a minute, of how you made every student feel like, recognize that they were cared for. Tanya, tell us what you think are the ingredients to a resilient school culture.
Well, there's a little bit being said to go last because you don't repeat what your colleagues have already said. So I'm going to add a few pieces onto what was already stated. One of the key things that for me is about resilience, key resilience components are, we also do take it a step further from what I heard mentioned, in that we actually place a MTSS period in the day, meaning that we actually block out some time in our day for students to actually go to a class that is specifically designed for them around resiliency. So whether they need something to support them for social emotional, such as an anger management group, a relationship building group, whether they need extra support in a math group. We've got girls and boys groups going. So the point being that to make it resilient and to happen on an intentional daily basis, we built it into our schedule of our master schedule. And that takes some real definition. And so we have interventionists that work specifically to make it a true MTSS model, where these students rotate through these classes every 9 weeks. So they have a pre-test, or if you will, we do a social emotional survey that gives us some indicators around what students are going to be needing for the year. And then they're placed in those classes throughout the 9 weeks based off of that survey inventory. So to build that resilience, you're helping students to be able to understand, number one, they've got a relevant person that we've talked about already, that's been identified, that's going to be their teacher, that's going to give them that unconditional support throughout the year. And not only do they have this class, but then it's set up so that we train the teachers that are teaching these classes to be able to zero in on that specific skill set, topic, issue that those students have been identified and put in that class for. So if it's an anger management class, we may be using an outside agency to come in that already has curriculum, so that we don't have to build that curriculum, but they then come in and with that teacher support, deliver that curriculum for that 9-week session for students. And then at the end of that 9 weeks, students can either stay with that group or they can move to another group that's been identified that they also need support. So at least we know within the 4 quarters, they're going to be able to get 4 areas of need to support their student success. And again, it's in the areas that the students select, in the areas that our specialists take a look at and say, okay, you know, this is what this student would probably benefit from, and parents have input into that as well. But that helps build the resilience in the school, having those surveys, having those mid-year and then our mid 9-week intercession checks, and then that post before we move them to another area. So we've seen a lot of success by being able to zero in on specifically what students need. And then they start to open up to their mentor And that mentoring class, I want to just quickly say, is a separate class. So they not only have someone who's teaching their special MTSS class, they also have a mentoring teacher who then monitors their grades, monitors their behavior, monitors any needs, and we keep them small. There are about 10 to 12 students in a group. So it's also done with best practices for a small setting.
That is awesome. So you just lit the chat room up a little bit. Let me ask you a couple follow-up questions that I had and that a couple people brought up. First of all, does every kid in your school go through that track of MTSS classes?
Every single student.
Awesome. How long is the MTSS class period, like during the day? How many minutes?
At the middle school, we do 35 minutes. That's what we chiseled out, 35 minutes. And at the high school, it's right at 40 minutes. And again, I want to be clear, some of the students are doing enrichment. So if they need to do enrichment classes and they want to talk about world issues, so we make it specific to what those students need. So you can imagine it takes a lot of coordination, but when you take that survey at the beginning of the year, it starts to point out indicators of students who are going to need those tier 3. And it's also going to point out those kids who are enriched and need that side of the world.
That's perfect. And then did you all develop your assessment, or are you using a third-party one?
We're using a third-party assessment that we pulled in from United Way. They have a survey that we pull, and students can answer about a series of about 22 questions, and they do it by ID. So you can track back through IDs who said what. If there's a student in crisis and something comes up out of that survey, you're able to track back who the student was that needed that help.
That's awesome. Just for everybody's information, and I hope this is okay, the panelists have been kind enough to let us know that we're going to share contact information at the end, email addresses. And so I'm guessing some people will probably have some specific questions about some of the systems that all three of our panelists described. And we'll put contact information up, but I want to keep the discussion moving. Let's jump into the next one. I'm curious, maybe I'm going to combine, I'm going to combine questions. This is kind of a two-parter. Talk a little bit about some of the obstacles that you've seen to creating a resilient school culture, and then maybe also talk about the connection that you see specifically between relationships and resilience. And if that's too much to fit into one, then we can split it in two. But I think we can. I think we can kind of combine those two because it'll be an important discussion. Let's go, Dr. Tolliver, Dr. Jenkins, and then Mike. You're up, Camille.
All right. So I think one of the biggest obstacles to creating a resilient school culture is that everyone has to be bought in, from the administrative assistant to your bus driver to the custodian. It takes everyone to build the culture. So no matter where the student is in the building, if they're, with the admin assistant or if they're with the teacher, they're all speaking the same language, the language of resilience. So no matter where they go, they're valued, adults are transparent, and there's some accountability there. And so I think it's just getting everybody involved. And sometimes we don't see the results right away, and we want to immediately give up, or this isn't working, because it takes a lot to have the whole entire school, all the students, everyone bought in. So I think time and patience are also some obstacles that occur as far as building a resilient culture. As far as where relationships fit into that, relationships are absolutely key. I think we've said that on multiple occasions, and research supports that if a student has one caring adult in their lives, they build that resilience, and it also leads to better academic outcomes. So what that means is, I'll give you an example. When I started a brand new school with different students, I knew that if I didn't have a relationship with these students, they weren't going to learn, and they weren't going to like me. And I learned very quickly that if they like me, they'll be willing to learn from me. And an example of that I can give is I'm not a Star Wars fan, which please don't be upset. I'm sorry, I didn't grow up on Star Wars, but I had a group of students come to school, and it was May 4th. And I guess may the 4th be with you. And so the first year, I had no idea what it was. And these students, we really didn't connect here. So the next year I got ready. I'm like, look, I am going to be ready for May the 4th be with you. So I watched all the Star Wars movies. I was ready. And when the next May 4th came, I didn't dress up, but I made it more of a school thing. And so those students felt value, we connected, and it really helped me to walk with them in their learning path. So just to reiterate, everyone has to be on board. That's a huge obstacle. And when you build relationships with students, when you find out what they love and you get involved in their world, they'll let you in. And that's what helps them build that resilience, because you're walking with them.
Love it. Thank you. May the 4th be with you is right. That's awesome. What a great example.
I think I'm next, right?
Yep.
So I'd like to add on to what my colleague said there. And one of the things that for me that I don't want to repeat what she said, so I'm going to add this piece. I think the obstacle is trying to use traditional methods. When you're trying to use traditional methods and get resiliency, you're going to fall flat a lot of times. So I think we have to really think in terms of the word relevancy for me. When we think in terms of obviously, we've got to get everybody to buy in, but in a cultural setting, that's very difficult, because people come, as I stated at the onset, people come with different values and different beliefs. And so getting people to understand that, our values and beliefs are great, but they're centered around students. So we have to make sure that we understand that the traditional things may work, but you have to be willing to step outside of the traditional methods and be inclusive of some innovative ideas. And that takes everybody at the table being able to acknowledge that and say, yes, we know this program, we know that program, but that's not where this child doesn't need any of that. So what we create in our school is we create sort of, if you will, steps. And we say, okay, if you've done this block of steps for 2 weeks and it didn't work, then let's move to this block of ideas. If that doesn't work for 2 weeks, then it's just being creative enough to have something built so that staff understands, yes, it's easy to say, be creative, step outside the box, but now here's a hard copy of what that looks like and what that means. And so my staff understands, if you as a teacher have done something and you're not getting it, have you included the building administration? If you've included the building administration and the teacher input and parent, and that hasn't helped, have you included the superintendent and me at the top of the chain so it's giving them the idea that we're a team. It doesn't matter about your labels. It doesn't matter about your titles. It matters about, are we getting success with that student? And then as far as how that relates to, relationships, nothing happens without relationships. Anybody that's in education understands, if you don't build that relationship, and the way you build that relationship, as far as I'm concerned, is the relevancy. I mean, I think, Dr. Tolliver said, hey, I had to get into where they were. So again, if you can become relevant with what the students need, and I have to, we always have to get our staff to understand that may not be what it means to you, but it is what it means to the student. Once you make that thing relevant to them, you can't stop them. I had one teacher say to me, when she did that, kids were emailing her at 12 o'clock at night. And she says, I'm so glad they're excited, but Jenkins, you have started a whole new problem. They think they can just email me on a Saturday at 12 o'clock because they want to get it right. But she tapped into what they wanted, and now they want to get it right for her. And it was just, that relationship was amazing to hear.
So good. Thank you. Mike.
All right. I think when the barriers, one is communication. I think we talk about using a common language and being able to connect with kids in a way that that they will understand and follow, and really, I think communication across the district itself and being able to all be on the same pages can be a barrier to that. I think even just the distance that we've been having even amongst each other and staff, when you look at that resilience culture within a school, is trying to break down those barriers and make sure that we still have those connections in place. And I just want to touch on even the staff buy-in piece again is a big can be a barrier to that. And part of that is really, I go back to that administrative support and buy-in, and then professional development to help understand the why of what you're doing, to get the buy-in and how we develop that culture within our school. And relationships, that relationship between relationships and resilience. I would just add that relationships, we know from the research that even physical relationships, when I think of understanding child development and how even that physical touch and caring impacts that child's view of the world and people and their perception all the way throughout their life. And it starts as an infant. And that need doesn't change, right? As our kids grow up and our students get older, we still need to be able to have those connections to grow emotionally and physically. And that power, that relationship, that protective power becomes that source of resilience for that student. And I think specifically, there've been great examples of connections and how you make connections with kids and that relevance to that. And I guess my thought is that if we've used maybe some more out of the box, like music, interaction, you talked about the arts, bringing in guitar lessons for students within some of the classes that we have, maybe some of the tutoring classes, and being able to just use that as a way, as an interest in collecting and being able to build that relationship from there, and being able to expand and develop those interests. And so just, finding that connection is important.
And if I could, if I may, I just want to add, you made me think of something, Mike, when you said that. One of the things that we found in doing the whole relevancy piece and doing these classes that I'm talking about, we've been doing the mindfulness. So we've been bringing in yoga, we've been bringing in the aromatherapy for students. They absolutely love it.
Yeah, any of those regulatory activity pieces that you can bring in, I think it just, and build it as a part of the day within your schedule, just helps overall with being able to, for students to be able to handle the adversity or pressures, or even just that novelty of learning, right? We're not trying to take away the stress, we're helping them build the skills to be able to deal with it. And those are great tools. Yeah.
So good, thank you. The topic of relevance came up a few times, and I just wanted to really endorse that. So one of the reasons we invited Youth 3 on is because when the WhyTry organization that's been hosting these since last year, we are an SEL and a resilience organization, and we get the chance to work with educators throughout the country, and Youth 3 in particular have been really impressive as kind of these great examples of relationship building and relevance, which always seems to be kind of key to building resilience in our school cultures. And when kind of the WhyTry approach to relevance is just kind of two parts. We look at it, one, how do we help our message apply specifically to our kids' lives? And then two, how do we make sure that we are being sensitive to both generational relevance and cultural relevance? And I think all of the examples that you shared are really right in line with that. And then it's kind of you can almost look at it like a mathematic formula when you combine the protective factor of relationships, helping kids recognize that there is a caring adult in their life, with relevance of messaging and skills being delivered, then the end result of that ends up being resilience. So that's how we approach it, is R plus R equals R, relationship plus relevance equals resilience. And I love it. We definitely didn't plan for that, but I love it when these common ideas kind of seem to join together in the universe. let's talk a little bit. Let's jump into some strategies. This is one that I think people are going to be really interested in. Wondering if you'd be willing to share some specific strategies or practices that you think can help build a resilient school culture. And this could be either strategies and practices directly to be delivered to kids, or with your staff and faculty to try to create buy-in. I know that came up a couple times. So I'll leave it open to however you want to respond to it. But maybe if we could go, let's go in this order: Dr. Jenkins, Mike, and Dr. Tolliver.
Okay. And that's where the rubber meets the road, are the strategies, because we talk a lot of times about the difference between the theory and the practice. And so it's very easy to get into that whole theory conversation, but then when the rubber meets the road, it's okay, what practices are you doing that really resound loudly for students? And so one of the things that a practice that I'm just going to share a couple that I think are doable when you go back right away. I always like tips that are going to be effective for me to do the next day. So one of the things that I think is very important for a strategy is for us to understand that failure is not an option. And again, that's easy to say, but it's not a coined phrase. It is a belief that we use, and it's a strategy that we use, so that if we have a conversation and we start to get stagnated around the conversation, it's very easy for educators to start talking about what doesn't work and to talk about the problem. And so what we're able to do in our conversations is to say, okay, failure not being an option, what have we not tried? So that's sort of our jumping off point to be able to move the conversation forward. So just creating some kind of a statement that in any kind of a meeting, whether it's an administrative team meeting that I'm having, whether it's a faculty meeting, whether I'm talking to parents or a student group, I always say to them, okay, you know, in our organization, that's not an option. So what are we going to do because of it? Another one that I think is very important is that we set goals. Every student, teacher, we set our daily goals. So we say, okay, yesterday, if Murphy's Law got the best of us and something happened that we just don't have control over, we're able to acknowledge, you know what, we didn't have control over that. It's already happened. We're not going to stew in it. We're going to move forward. Let's set our new goal. And what's our new goal for this week? So setting those short-term goals and having celebrations around those short-term goals is very, very important to the organization, because it gives people, I have a Friday meeting that I do with the whole organization. And the first thing we always start off with is just spending some time around celebrations. And people understand it doesn't have to be celebrations around the organization. It can be celebrations in your life. It could be celebrations. It's just helping us to get that mindset back that we're on a positive vein and not always on the downtrodden vein. And the last one that I think I'd like to share is just, we also do not only short-term goals with celebrations, but we also do exit expectations. So one of the things, again, we've talked about the accountability piece, and we can't have education without that lovely word, accountability. So we might as well embrace it, right? And say, how are we going to have exit outcomes for whatever it is we're doing, whether it's the project, whether it's that grade level. We set those so that those can be visibly seen, and we come back to those very often. It's like, let's pull up those exit outcomes. Where are we with that? Right now, we're doing our mid-year look at those, review of those. We have grade level conversations. We have administrative team meetings. We have whole organization. So it's just bringing those back up in front of people to be able to say, okay, this is what we're shooting for. Where are we in the process of getting there? So that helps all of us to stay focused on the work that we're doing.
Nice, thank you. Let's see, we're gonna go Mike next.
Sure. And I listen, I'm learning as I'm listening here too. And I love the fact that you have, it's that resilience in staff. We're not going to give up. We're going to be persistent and continue to work with kids. I love that. I love that philosophy. I just want to talk maybe about a specific practice that we've used at different schools at different ways. And I'm a big believer in mentoring, in providing that model of what we expect. And it also is providing opportunities for those relationships to grow, and for students to not only be mentored, but to mentor other students. And that doesn't have to be a great time consuming. It can be incorporated into how you're doing classes, how you're doing instruction. We talk about, I think of reading buddies, having at the elementary level, having 5th grade to 3rd grade, and having structured that time for students to spend time together. I think intentionally making connections with students across various groups through whether that's the way you run even assemblies or work together, to have some collaboration time among the school with the kids and have some focused opportunities. We've got some clubs that do a great job of doing that. There's one called Sources of Strength that works within our district that kind of helps students make connections and think about how we can understand each other better and build some of those relationships. One specific activity that one of our schools has done is to actually connect with the local church and come up with some guidelines for mentoring students and bringing in community folks to be able to do that. And I just know there was one, it's been going for a couple of years, but I think of one young lady that I had worked with as a social worker that really had not planned on finishing school. Just a lot of barriers that were happening, and had built that relationship with this mentor. And I, as the years went on, we saw that those barriers be able to be overcome, not go away, but to be able to overcome, in addition with the support of that mentor that had started through school and just continued, that relationship continued on until she was able to finish school. So when I think about practices and kind of boots on the ground work, that's a good foundation to start with.
Nice, thank you. Camille.
Right. Yeah, so I'm gonna share my screen again. Let's go for here. All right, so let's go to the next slide. There we go. So strategies for resilience. So I talked about before the 3 key ingredients. And like the first one I talked about was unconditional value. And we want to ensure that every student has a connection with at least one adult in your building. And one of the things that we did was I call it the Post-it note strategy. My staff and I were struggling with a couple of students, and we had a staff meeting. And what I did was I had a big board and I had all of our students, and I said, okay, let's put a Post-it note next to every student that either you have a connection with or has a connection with someone in the building. When we got finished with the activity, there were 5 or 6 students that no one put a Post-it note by. And that was a huge reality to us as a staff, because we know, and again, as I said before from research, a kid needs someone in that building that they can connect with. And so we were very intentional about ensuring that these students felt valued, they felt supported, and we made an intentional effort to ensure that every student had an adult in the building. The second one is transparency. And I got this term from the WhyTry Resilience Youth Curriculum as far as surrendering the one up. And I love that phrase. And basically what that means is the adults in the building are sharing their own personal stories, their own personal challenges with the students. So where before we have the teacher up here and the student down here, this levels the playing field to where, yes, the students are experiencing challenges, but as an adult, I experience challenges as well. And to let the students know that I'm human, you're human, and we're in this together. Really quick example, I lost my son in 2016, unexpectedly. He was 10 years old, and that was in May. So in July, I was back at work and I was having a terrible day. And, a student was kind of getting teachers a little riled up, getting upset. And he came into my office and I just sat there and I said, I just need 5 minutes. I'm having a really rough day. And he said, why? And I shared what happened to my son. And that student just looked at me with tears and gave me a hug and was like, wow, and you're here? I'm like, yeah, I'm here because I'm here for you. And I thank you for being here for me. And so I learned that it's okay to be vulnerable with your students. It's okay to share, because they need to know if they see resilience in you, then there's hope for them. And then finally, is accountability. I've learned that we use our relationships from resilience to build resilience to help them overcome. As I said before, when we see our students turn their challenges into tools for success, they need someone to guide them in that process. So when they have someone in the building to where I do make a mistake, it's over, I'm done, I'm finished, I'm never going to graduate, they've got that person in their corner saying, yes, you can graduate. What is this challenge? What can we do to make this better? How can we help you succeed? So those are the 3 keys, and those are some strategies that you can use to kind of help build resilience even within your students.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit about how we can do this, tips for doing this specifically during our current pandemic situation. Obviously, the pandemic has created a situation where most of us are in some type of blended model. And even if we are in person, we're in person with social distancing measures in place. What are some of the things you've done, or some tips you would share, strategies you would share for trying to build and improve this resilient school culture amidst our current pandemic situation? And let's go, Mike, Dr. Tolliver, Dr. Jenkins.
All right. I kind of am looking in the chat to a little bit of questions. I think it's really looking at this whole question of, like, is it the pandemic, and how do we continue to do some of the things that we've done in the past through that distance learning model. And I just, one of the things that immediately struck me when we went to distance learning was the question of how we're going to continue that social emotional learning and that support, right? Building those connections in a virtual environment. And it's been a challenge. It still is a challenge to be able to do that, but the continuing check-in on a regular basis, like having a system, building a way to have staff reaching out virtually to those students, not just relying on them logging in for class or however you do it, but have a system to say, I'm responsible for these kids, and if they haven't, I'm going to do that check. But then also have that next step, if they're not having success, to be able to connect and provide that instruction. And I would say even that SEL instruction was more my focus with this, but to look at who supports them next along the line. And we're fortunate within our district. I saw that was a question I was referring to, is like, what's the size of the district and working? we have about 14,000 students in our district. There's about 1,000 kids in each of the 6 secondary schools I work with, and there's an alternative school as well. So, and we've got anywhere from 60 to 80 teachers at each of the schools working with those kids. So so that to me is a force of being able to reach out and monitor on a regular basis. We're also very fortunate to have social workers, counselors, and then school psychologists within each of our building. It's kind of our student support staff team that is that next level. And however your school is structured, or whatever resources you have, to make sure that's a team effort to continue to be able to reach out and make those connections. I think of the tier 2 interventions that we talked about, that I showed, and what we look at is that individual work with kids. We do a check-in, check-out, and we have groups, and those are determined on need and data. When we went to distance learning, there was a lot of question on how do we continue those. So we created some virtual check-in, check-out, whether we're using even a rating, even if we can just get a rating scale from system. One of the things that really made me anxious, I think, as we worked with our community partners in law enforcement, they're saying they're getting all these increases in domestic violence reports, and our partners in like social services that we help support our kids are saying they're getting much less reports of incidents in kids. And I think they've lost the protective factor, and to me, how we do it, it's that systematic approach, and it's not perfect and it's not going to be 100%, but I think it's that shows that effort that we continue to try.
Thank you. Camille.
All right, final screen share, I promise. So I just kind of kept the three key ingredients, and I thought about some ways that we can show our students that they're valued, and especially online. I think intentional acknowledgement of every student in class. So you say their name at least once or twice while you're talking to them. So if you have all these Zoom pictures of students, good morning, how are you? You know, making sure they know that you know they're there and you acknowledge them. And also, I think Mike just discussed this, but reach out to the students that you don't see. And not in a way of where you been, but hey, you know, I missed you in class today. How's it going? Do you need anything? That type of reaching out. And then finally, it's kind of like when I talked about surrendering the one up and, you know, sharing personal stories and challenges with students. I think if you would spend 2 to 3 days per week using activities where the students get to know you and you get to know your students. So anything from like, what's your favorite food today? Or, you know, do you like pets? Anything that brings that student and you at the same level, same playing field in the class, where you are sharing together and learning more and more about each other. I mean, I think that will also help build resilience and relationships in the classroom. And then finally, the accountability piece, as far as using those relationships to build resilience with students, look for natural pockets of time to identify how you build resilience as a class. There were multiple times when my son, he's going virtual, where the learning management system wouldn't work. And so they couldn't share their reports. And, you know, one of the ways I loved about being resilient is, you know, hey guys, we can't share our reports today. What are we going to do? How do we keep this moving? What can we do? And how can we be resilient in this area? How can we not give up? What are some strategies? What do you guys think? You know, one student says, drew a picture and took a picture of it and shared a screen. That's how he shared, you know, overcame that obstacle. And to me, that was the perfect way of showing resilience. It's small, but use that as a way to say, we're not going to give up, even though we're not able to use the technology, you know, even though there are times in life where things happen and we have these obstacles. How do we press forward? There's also times where my son has breakout rooms with his teacher. So there's 3 or 4 students in a small group. That is a great time to be a little bit more personal with those students. And then also my son's teacher, and I think this is a great idea, that she has office hours. So if one student just wants to talk, they set up a time saying, hey, can I have from 10 o'clock to 10:15? And you give that student your undivided attention. You have a conversation, and that's another way to help build resilience during this virtual time.
Nice, thank you. Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you. Camille and Mike obviously said some things that were on my list. So if I mention them, it's just going to be in the way that we do them in our organization. But 2 things that for me stand out: fun and competition. In this time of resilience, you have to remember that you cannot forget the fun. So we're always intentionally having conversations with how do we build back in fun. So I'm going to share a couple little tidbits. One of the things that, and I think this is so important because it builds on the relationships, it builds on all of the resilience, it builds on all of these things. When people have a sense of belonging, they're going to want to show up for class because they're like, oh, what am I going to miss? You know? So in order to do fun, we do a lot of things that people do naturally, but I'm just saying in this time, do more of it. We actually intentionally go to our student senate and we ask students, hey, what are some incentives that would really be nice for you to receive? And not for anything major, just for showing up all 5 days while we're in remote, or showing up to classes all 5 days because it's cold outside and you came in person. We come up with some crazy ways of, you know, why would we celebrate again what you're doing, and how can we make it fun? And we get what students say. Students will come up with some of the craziest things that will make them have fun. We had a movie night where, sounds crazy, which was really well attended. And what we did was we had students send it, pick out the movie that they wanted to see. And then we had what we just called a drive-through. And the drive-through in the cars was you came through and you picked up your bag of popcorn and your liter of soda. And then we live streamed the movie at 6 o'clock on a Friday night. And you know, so here we are, you see your friends all in the movie, you got your popcorn, you're eating, you see your staff there, you see kids there. It was really a fun night. It was really great. We also have, so all kinds of incentives, all kinds of little pop-up sites where the teachers can show up, the students can show up, you can still do your social distancing from the car and wave at each other. So we do all kinds of things like that. And another thing I think is the competition side. We do some things that are virtual, but they're competitions. We had a night where, and this is crazy again, but okay, you know, I'm into the arts, so I'm already half crazy anyway, so it's okay. I own it, so it's fine if I own it. And so one of the things that we did was because of the generational, we had songs, okay? So you could play the song and you had to tell, and they were on teams. So it was teacher teams, parent teams, student teams, and you had to be able to name not only the name of the song, but the artist and about what year that song was a hit. And so we just had like a fun game night, and that was also a hit. So just finding ways, and then it's a little bit of a competition because then whoever the winning team is obviously is going to get, you know, breakfast the next day through little gift cards of $5, you know, for the winning team, $5 each gift cards, and we can mail those home to them to go get their McDonald's or go to get their, Chick-fil-A or whatever. But it's just keeping it fun and keeping it again relevant, but adding the competition piece because people always love a little bit of competition. So those are a few things that I would throw out there.
So good. I love it. Let's finish up. We're about out of time. One last question that I think we can probably answer fairly brief. Let's just go around the horn, and I love to end on this one. Just tell me something right now that's giving you hope. 2021 is it's feeling hopeful, but it's still started off a little bit rough. Tell me something that's giving you hope. Let's go, Camille, Tanya, Mike.
All right. What has given me hope is the fact that we as a country or a nation, and even our individual households, are seeing how resilient we truly are because of these times. And we have been creative. We have done everything we can to overcome. And so I think if we keep this up, I'm very hopeful that our resilience as a country and nation, individuals, even our school systems, I think that gives me hope that we're resilient and we're going to keep fighting on.
Love it. Thank you, Tanya.
What gives me joy and hope is that I work with a team of professionals who understand that we don't get to stagnate, we get to change as the world moves, and we get to work for students, and they put a smile on their face every day, and we dream about what's possible, not what's not.
Thank you, Mike. What's giving you hope?
What gives me hope is the people I work with, and watching how they've come together, and really that renewed or expanded interest in understanding how we need each other and how we can be resilient together.
I love it. Thank you. And I guess I'll add mine. You know, for me, what's giving me hope again, like it's always a combination of the educators I get to work with throughout the country, and then the kids. Like even watching my own kids at home, I've got 5 kids that are all in public education, and seeing how kids have responded and how the adults in their life have responded has just been incredible. You know, I've always said, and it's not hyperbole at all, the greatest humans in the world get into education and mental health and public service. And it's been impressive to see what everybody's done. So I'm really excited. I've got high hopes for 2021, and really excited for the ideas we were able to share today. Let's give everybody, all our panelists, a virtual round of applause for joining us today and sharing some of their ideas, telling their story, and bringing their expertise with them. And then thank you all to everybody that joined us. This was really well attended today. And I love when people start sharing ideas through the chat tool as well. We had some nice chatter throughout, and it's really fun to be part of this community. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to put up a slide with some contact information if you want to reach out to any of our panelists, or if you have any questions about us organizationally, it will have some information there. I'm going to play a little music in the background. And then to our three panelists, you're welcome to stay on and peruse the chat tool